I like doing booktube tag videos, and so today I want to do the used bookstore tag created by Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading. And so I just want to get right into it because it is about one of my favorite topics in the book hobby, and that is used bookstores. So the first question is, what is your favorite or most often visited used bookstore, and what sets it apart or makes it special? My favorite is Recycled Books in Denton, Texas. It is the best bookstore ever, and it is special for a few reasons. One, the building is over 100 years old. It used to be an opera house, and now it just holds a very, very big bookstore. You've got 3 different levels to this bookstore. The basement is full of nonfiction, essentially. It's the history, travel, games, lots and lots of history. I mean, like, holy crap. Just the history section is bigger than my house. It is magnificent. And then on the main floor, you've just got everything else you would expect: science fiction, fantasy, art, all the pulp comics, there's CDs, there's movies, just what you would expect. Upstairs is essentially the lit fix. I was just up there looking for Main Street by Sinclair Lewis, and while I was up there, not only were there some very cool copies of Main Street, there were some very interesting biographies. One of the things they do that I enjoy is the biographies don't have a specific section. They go where they're most relevant. So if you're in science fiction and fantasy, you are going to run into a Robert E. Howard biography next to the Conan novels. I've seen that all throughout the store, and it's just so great because, like, where else are you going to put that crap? Now, in like the history section downstairs, they do have it separated as like English history, English biographies. There it makes sense, but everywhere else, like, put them where they belong. The other thing that makes them special is they don't have like a online registry. They don't scan anything. Basically what they do is they buy books at a price and then they sell it marked up. And so that price could be a little more than you would see on like eBay or something, or significantly less than you would find for that same book online. Their goal is to make a specific profit off of their books. I mean, it's my guess. This is conjecture. I haven't asked. Maybe I should. They sell books at a markup. I mean, duh. I mean, that's how retail works. And it's just great because you find all sorts of really cool deals, and sometimes they'll just pick up a redundant book and then just sell it for a lot cheaper than the other one because now they've got multiple copies, so it doesn't really matter. And what's nice is I have really weird interests, and as long as Jake at Pulp Mortem isn't snatching the books, then they'll be there later and they might get marked down. They have a pretty good clearance area. They recently acquired way too many paperback books, so they now have a wall of mass market paperbacks that are $1. And there's some really good stuff in there. Number 2, does your used bookstore take credit? If so, how much credit do you get for your books? Do they give cash for your books? They do give cash for your books, but if you keep it as store credit, you get 20% more, which is just amazing because, you know, what am I going to do with a little extra cash? I'm going to spend it on books, so why not get 20% more cash? I always use up my store credit. There's never any left over. They will hold your credit. They'll keep it on file, but I just use it all because what am I doing there except buying books? And they're always going to have something I want. How often do you go to your used bookstore? Can you share how much credit you have there? I already answered that question accidentally. And how often I go is I try to go every 3rd week. It is a set date that my wife and I like to go on. We both are very into having a routine. It doesn't really spoil any of the joy we get out of it by it not being spontaneous. Every 3rd week, we do our best to go to the coffee shop by the bookstore, then go to the bookstore, and then go get lunch. It's wonderful. I'm actually going to be going again soon because it'll be a special day. We get to take our daughter because she's actually out of school. Number 4, what, if any, restrictions does your used bookstore have on how you can use your credit? As far as I know, there's no restrictions. I've bought super expensive rare books from their locked cabinets. I've bought books that cost almost nothing, cassette tape, vinyl records. So I don't think there's any limitations. I've bought new books there too. So I think credit is credit. Maybe you can't buy merch. I don't know. We usually pay cash for the merch, but maybe I can buy merch with it. I don't know. If I can, that opens up a whole new avenue to me. Usually I just pay cash for that stuff. Speaking of which, you go to Recycle Books and you have one of their branded book bags or one of their articles of clothing on, you get 10% off your purchase, which means that I get 20% increased store credit, so my purchasing power is 20% better. I get a 10% discount, so I get a net 30% increase in my purchasing power, which is just awesome. How is your used bookstore organized? What do you like and or dislike about how it's organized? I mentioned it before. It's organized by like layers of the building. They do have these really weird things. I've had friends go in and they said, I couldn't find anything. It was just kind of confusing, and you got to get used to it. But you step in, right in front of you is clearance vinyls and stuff like that, clearance books if it's bad weather outside. They always have these interesting thematic sales. So like in October, it's all horror novels and stuff, and they're always on sale. Then right next to that is all of the crime fiction and just the really popular stuff. I mean, we're talking like J.D. Robb, Tom Clancy, and all that. Those are all in there too, with all the crime stuff everyone expects. And above that, there's like all their folio books, which are in like a weird place next to the pulp crime. But I mean, once you know they're there, it's a little easier. They have a locked cabinet behind like all the crime novels, and then that's all the crime stuff, but also the horror stuff is there, so that's also strange. But the reason why is because there's no lock cabinets near the horror section. They have stuff kind of labeled. You figure it out really quick. What I do like most is you go into the second part of the middle floor and all the vinyl records are there. And then there's just a wall of science fiction and fantasy, and it's 50 feet long, 40 feet long, something like that, not more. And just about 6 feet tall all the way across is all the science fiction and fantasy you could want. And then on one end, they have like their newest editions, so it's easy to find new stuff. They do put stuff out on the other shelves too, but it's always cool to go down there because they have bundles that they'll sell you. So this I absolutely love. The bundles could be like something as mundane as, oh, Lord of the Rings with The Hobbit, all 4 books. Each one's individually priced whatever, but they've bundled them together, so you have to buy the bundle, and you usually get like 20% off or something. One of them that's sitting in there that I think is a banging deal is they have the Dragon Bone chair, first edition, first printing, and then they have a book club edition of the middle book I can't remember the name of, and they're bundled together for like 35 or 40 bucks, which the Dragon Bone chair alone is worth more than that. So you're getting a good value. And they always do stuff like that. Like I bought like 5 of the Witch World books by Andre Norton bundled together for like $6. Those are really good deals. At one point they had like an entire box of Terry Goodkind Sword of Truth series. That's out there forever. I wonder if they just like eventually just gave them away. So I'm always looking for those deals. Some of my best deals have been those bundles, and it's usually because I need one of the books in the bundle and it costs that much on eBay, and I get all the books, and then I end up gifting the rest of the books. One of the things I don't like about the organization is the historical fiction is tucked away literally in a closet, but they don't have a lot of historical fiction, so I can understand why it's there. And while I do have to walk through some of the really stupid metaphysical crap to get to the historical fiction, I also have to go past the westerns on my way to the historical fiction. So it's part of my route at this point. My wife and I literally have like a route we go through when we get there. Number 6, what is the best find or deal you got at a used bookstore? What is the best find or deal you got at a used bookstore? Number 6, what is the best find or deal you got at a used bookstore? It wasn't at Recycled Books. I'll talk about some of my favorite finds from there as well. My best find at a used bookstore was in Waco, Texas at like the Half Price Books discount store. It's like a big store. It's bigger than a normal Half Price Books, and it's just like their bulk that they have a bunch of the same. They have a bunch of the same stuff. We go in, I look around, and I'm not really finding anything because, I mean, seriously, it's like they have, 1,000 Nora Robert books, 1,000 Michael Crichton books, multiple shelves of Tom Clancy, 80 copies of all the Twilight novels. It's that kind of thing. They just have a ton of the same crap that you see at regular Half Price Books. But at the counter, they had a copy of The Shining by Stephen King just sitting on a shelf back there. And I was looking at it and I was like, hey, that's only $18. Even if it's not like a true first edition, that's still a good deal for a hardcover with a nice dust jacket. So I bought it. It sat on my shelf for 5 years. And then I looked up how much it costs. The book is worth somewhere between $400 and $800, and I paid $18 for it. Now the problem is it's hard to know whether or not you have a true first edition first printing unless you look at this little number in the very back of the book on the last page, and most of them are not true first edition first printings, but mine was. So I think what ended up happening was Half Price Books just didn't know what they had, and I didn't either. So that's like my best find by like a wide margin. But when it comes to Recycled Books, honestly, almost everything I get from them is a deal. It's just so good. I mean, I mention it in almost every book haul. I'm like, oh, look at this thing that I just got at Recycled Books for next to nothing or way cheaper than I would have found it online. I picked up a first edition of Dwellers in Darkness by August Derleth Derleth from Arkham House for, I don't know, way too cheap. Same goes with a copy of a Clark Ashton Smith collection. It was like a UK hardcover. I don't know why it was as cheap as it was, but I'm very glad I got it. That's about it for that. Number 7, is there something you saw at your used bookstore and now you regret not purchasing it? That's literally every time I go. I think my most recent one was probably Roger Zelazny's collection of short stories, volume 4. I picked up volume 1 and volume 3 from there for like $20 each, $25 each. And I think new they're 30 or 40. So it's not too terrible, but I did miss out on it. And it already had a Brodart on it. So, that would have made me happy. Oh no, I do remember my biggest goof at Recycled Books. They had all of the Robert E. Howard like Gnome Press hardcovers. They were missing dust jackets and they weren't in the best shape, which is why I just was like, nah. But they were, I don't know, $10 or $15 each. And I should have just bought all of them. Oh, actually, one of my best deals you can see right behind me, right up here. That is the entire Theodore Sturgeon short story collection. I got 9 of the 10 at Recycled Books for, I don't know, $12 a piece on average. So that was quite the steal. I'm very excited about that because it's hundreds and hundreds of dollars to buy them all together online, and they've all got Brodarts on them except for the one I had to buy separate, and they're just beautiful. One of them, it has a little sun damage, but other than that, it's not too bad. But yeah, those Gnome Press books broke my heart when I realized they were so rare. I was actually discussing them with Bridger from the Library Ladder, and he's like, if those are still there, you should pick them up. And I was like, oh no, that was a year ago. Why did I do that? I got lots of regrets when I go there. Every time I put something back, and then we leave and my wife's like, did you get that one book? And I was like, no. She's like, why? I was like, because I put it back and then I forgot. That's usually what it is. She said she gets anxiety now when I pull out a book and I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And then I put it back on the shelf. She's like, just carry it. Just carry it and put it back after you replace it with something nicer as we're shopping. And I'm like, okay. So now I end up walking around with a pile of books. But how they get you is they're like, oh, hey, we'll put the pile of books up at the counter so you don't have to lug them around this whole time. And I'm like, okay. And then I get another pile of books and then I get up there and they hand me my other pile and I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm buying twice as many books as I thought. But it's okay because they're cheap and I got store credit. Is there a book you are always on the hunt for at your used bookstores? Yes, there's quite a few. I don't let them create like a mental block for when I'm shopping where I'm just like hyper focused. It's just that I have like all of these different books tumbling around in my head. It is part of my routine and I'll just go through the routine. My wife and I show up, we look at the clearance first because I always find something there. Then we go in, we look at the themed area where stuff's cheap. She looks at the vinyl records and then I comb through the crime section looking for John D. MacDonald hardcovers, Ed McBain hardcovers because I want to start reading his work. I just picked up a signed book of his from there on the clearance rack for $4. Then I look at the locked cabinet and my wife catches up with me because she goes to horror because she's looking for a hardcover copy of Burn Witch Burn by Abraham Merritt. I check the other section to make sure one of the books is still there that I want to buy eventually because they don't have a very high turnover with their rare and expensive books. And then I check to see if another book is over there. And actually, I will show you that book because it was part of my routine and I picked it up and I'm super happy and I'm still going to show it off in a book haul later. John D. MacDonald, 3 for McGee. This is the first time that the first 3 Travis McGee novels were printed in hardcover, and it is not a book club edition. This boy was $6 brand new in like 1967. So this is definitely one of my most prized possessions now. I adore all 3 of these books. The Deep Blue Goodbye, Nightmare in Pink, A Purple Place for Dying. They are fantastic. They put these out in individual hardcovers later on, mostly in like libraries and stuff, and those are like hundreds of dollars. So I picked that up recently because I sold books to them. I picked a bunch of nonfiction off my shelves that I knew I would never read again, along with a few books that I either had nicer copies of now or just had no interest in reading, like a ratty mass market paperback of The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub. Well, they bought everything and normally they don't. So I should have talked about that when it came to like store credit and stuff. They're very picky about what they buy because they're trying to be profitable. They're not like half price books where they're the GameStop of used books where you'll hand them a pile and they'll be like, I'll give you 17 cents, stuff like that. No, they give you a very good price for your books and then they sell them at a markup. Usually when I go in, they take less than half of what I offer them. So then I take the rest to half price books to get rid of them and get my 17 cents. This time they bought everything and I was very hyped and I was grabbing books and I had like this pile and I was like, oh, why don't I just buy the expensive book that I really want instead of a bunch of books I'm kind of interested in. I ended up putting almost everything back and just went and had them unlock the cabinet and give me that book. And I was just so excited. I looked at it the time before that I was there and I really wanted it. It's in very good shape. But anyways, back to my, sorry for the ADHD digression. Let's get back to my routine and what I'm on the look for. After the lock cabinet of crime fiction and horror, then my wife and I will go to the science fiction and fantasy. We start on one side and we work all the way down, and I check the bundles, I check the new stuff, and then I just go through, and every author I'm looking for is like Frederick Brown. I'm looking for The Crystal City by Orson Scott Card, because that's the last first edition, first printing I need for the Alvin the Maker series. And then just the heavy hitters. I mean, everything I talk about on my channel, I'm looking for in science fiction and fantasy. I also look for Guy Gavriel Kay every time I'm there. The person that's mostly in charge of the science fiction and fantasy has my tastes in books, so you see a lot of that stuff on the shelves, so that makes me very happy. And yeah, I just go all the way down, and then my wife will get bored of me looking at shelf by shelf by shelf, so she beelines for the Roger Zelazny and then spoils that for me by bringing them to me. And then you get to the end, and then there is the anthologies and then tie-ins like Star Wars books, Star Trek books, Dungeons and Dragons, stuff like that. So then after I look at that, I go backwards, back through the whole thing. I'm just always on the hunt for things, and I will miss them if I only look at that section once. And so after that, we go to the horror section, and then the pulp section is right next to that. So pulp paperbacks, and then also vintage science fiction and fantasy that they don't keep over there with the normal science fiction and fantasy. And the vintage science fiction and fantasy and stuff is where I found some of my best deals. I got the NESFA Press version of Silverlock by John Myers from over there, and I also got a really nice Manly Wade Wellman novel. And so yeah, when I'm in horror, I'm looking for Stephen King because I want a hardcover copy of The Stand before it got bloated when it was re-released, and I'm looking for a copy of Salem's Lot in hardcover, and my wife wants a copy of It. I don't know why. She's scared of clowns and I have no interest in reading it, so we look for that stuff. Also some John Saul books that have been recommended to me. I want a couple of those. They're like his very early works. Same goes for Dean Koontz. I want like a couple of his early books like Phantoms and stuff like that. Then we go downstairs, and in the history section, it's like I'm overwhelmed. Fortunately, they have like a general world history where they kind of put everything that's interesting, so you don't have to go picking through everything else. And then I hit up French and English history for things that pique my interest. I go to Russian history because I'm looking for a nice copy of the Gulag Archipelago. Then I go to German history because I'm desperate to find anything on the 30 Years' War. There's a couple of books that I'll know when I see them because they're somewhere in my brain and I'll recognize them as soon as I see the spine. And then I hit up like the war section, World War I and World War II, just to see if there's anything that's on my little tumbling list in my brain. I recently picked up a really cool book about the war in Algeria. I'll talk about that in a book haul, so I won't make this any longer than I have to. Number 9 is, if you could run your used bookstore for a day, what changes would you make? I would be scared to run my favorite used bookstore for a day. I think the only changes I would make would be building more shelves for the science fiction and fantasy section. I'm hoping that shelf space is like turtles, where the bigger the space, the more will be there, and the bigger the turtle will get. So I don't know. Maybe that's wish fulfillment on my part. Who knows? But yeah, there's not much I would change. I don't want to fix what isn't broken. And number 10, if you could go used book shopping with any booktuber in any city, who would you go with and where? This is hard because I would like to go book shopping with all of my booktuber pals. And so I have already given them open invitations to come to my area, and I will take you book shopping. Number 11, it's tag some booktubers. I'm going to put them in the tags. So let me know in the comments what your favorite used bookstores are. And thanks for watching. And with that, I'll see you next time.